Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. A high-stakes White House meeting as Ukraine's leader comes to Washington. President Trump confirms Zelensky will sign a rare minerals deal, but with conditions. And what's really on the table when these two leaders face off?
There was an initial deal, and that deal was access to those rare earth metals, which are under dispute, as I say, in exchange for services rendered. As in, not in exchange for future monies or for or for security guarantees for Ukraine, but in fact for past assistance. So, in a sense, there was a degree of extortion there.
In Japan, a coastal city in crisis as flames tear through Ofunato. The battle against the blaze continues into its second day. And could robots soon become caregivers? Meet Irek, the gentle giant being taught to tend to Japan's elderly. How this 150-kilogram humanoid is rolling patients, helping with socks, and potentially solving a healthcare crisis in the world's fastest aging nation. NET25 World News starts now. In a diplomatic gesture with royal backing, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has delivered a special invitation to current U.S. President Donald Trump during his White House visit today. Now, this invitation comes as the two leaders discuss critical security matters regarding Ukraine. Royal diplomacy was on display at the White House today as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived with more than just policy proposals. Tucked in his pocket was a personal invitation from King Charles III, offering President Trump a second state visit to Britain.
It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
Well, that is really nice. I must make sure his signature's on that. Otherwise, it's not quite as meaningful. It is, and that's quite a signature, isn't it? Beautiful.
This is a letter from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented.
The answer is yes. On behalf of our wonderful First Lady, Melania, and myself, the answer is yes.
The royal gesture came as Starmer sought stronger security guarantees for Ukraine. While both the UK and France have offered to deploy peacekeeping troops in the region, President Trump appeared unmoved on additional military commitments. Despite the cordial exchange, clear differences emerged over Ukraine during their press conference. While Starmer pressed for lasting security guarantees, Trump focused instead on potential trade opportunities.
My concern is that if there's a deal, and I hope there is a deal, that it must be a lasting deal, that it's not a temporary measure. And that is why I think it's really important that Putin knows that this deal, a historic deal, which I very much hope comes about, is there, and it's a lasting deal, and that we're able to deal with any inclination he has to go again or go further.
I think we'll have two deals. I think we'll have a deal on ending the war, and I think we're going to end up with a great trade deal with you. And it's an honor to be with you, and I want to thank everybody very much. Thank you very much.
As President Trump accepts this unprecedented second royal invitation, the key question remains whether diplomatic gestures, even those with royal backing, will influence his approach to Ukraine's security concerns. In what appears to be a shift in tone, President Trump has walked back previous criticisms of Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky during today's press conference. During his joint appearance with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, President Trump was confronted with his past characterization of the Ukrainian leader. When asked directly by a journalist if he still considered President Zelensky to be a dictator, and Trump appeared to distance himself from his earlier comments.
President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question. We have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for him. We've given him a lot of equipment and a lot of money, but they have fought very bravely, no matter how you figure it. They have really fought. Somebody has to use that equipment, and they have been very brave in that sense.
Now, sitting alongside Starmer in the Oval Office, Trump also said he thinks a peace deal reached with Russia would hold, and said he doesn't think Putin would invade Ukraine again.
Do you think that Vladimir Putin would be likely to invade again in the event of a peace deal?
I don't think so. I think when we have a deal, it's going to be the deal. I don't believe he's going to violate his word. I don't think he'll be back. When we make a deal, I think the deal's going to hold. Now, they're going to have security. You're going to have security. Yep. You're going to have soldiers. I know France wants to be there.
Now, when asked if Putin could be trusted, Trump said this.
You know, it's trust and verify, let's call it that. And I think we both can be that way. You have to verify, because you never know what's going to happen. I know.
A potentially game-changing minerals agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine has raised significant questions about its feasibility and implications. Now, President Trump confirmed today that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit the White House to sign what he called a very big agreement on rare earth minerals. But experts are questioning the deal's practicality amid ongoing territorial disputes. But the agreement has sparked debate among experts who question both the scale of Ukraine's mineral deposits and the feasibility of mining them during an active conflict. James Nixie, director of the Russia-Eurasia program at Chatham House, explains.
So the Ukrainians are claiming that they have some 5% of the world's rare earth metals in their territory. That is to say, in internationally recognized Ukrainian territory, which is not the same as what Kiev actually controls right now, of course. However, even this figure is disputed. There are reports out there which suggest that that has been overestimated and that Ukraine does not have as much as it claims, which brings into question the whole nature of the deal. But beyond that, of course, as Ukraine is a country at war, as it is a country that is under occupation in parts of its territory, then this brings into question the fact that it means that the war is a huge variable, the outcome of the war. So whether a deal is done or a victory is achieved on the battlefield will have an effect on the deal itself. So it does seem rather premature to agree on a deal when you don't know the full extent of the deposits and you don't know who's controlling them.
The stakes are particularly high given the strategic importance of these minerals. Russia and China currently supply 55% of the world's uranium enrichment capacity, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine has dramatically altered global supply chains for these critical resources. Nixie suggests the initial proposal had troubling undertones.
There was an initial deal, and that deal was access to those rare earth metals, which are under dispute, as I say, in exchange for services rendered, as in not in exchange for future monies or for security guarantees for Ukraine, but in fact for past assistance. So, in a sense, there was a degree of extortion there. Ukraine was to hand over its wealth in return for what it had supposedly been given. That deal has now been revised somewhat, but the terms of it are still unclear.
The agreement comes amid a complex diplomatic landscape. President Trump, who once called Zelensky a dictator, now appears to be pursuing a closer relationship. According to Nixie, Zelensky may be considering significant concessions.
We know that in one of his rasher moments, shall we say, that President Trump called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator without elections. Zelensky's response was, "Well, I'm happy to cede power, but if I do so, then I'm going to need something back from you." So he seems willing. He appears willing to make a certain self-sacrifice if Ukraine gets something in return. But as it stands, and I need to be clear about this, Ukraine isn't getting enough back for there to be a substantial deal.
Despite these concerns, Ukraine sees value in securing a formal agreement with Washington.
Well, I think there is some value to Ukraine, which is why they're going ahead with this, not just in a meeting with President Trump, but ensuring that there can be some sort of concrete relationship, something which actually significantly gets done.
As for the ultimate outcome of this complex situation, Nixie offers a sobering assessment.
In terms of a winner, I mean, it's yet to be decided. But I would say that as all things being equal, then there actually are no winners in this war. Not the Ukrainians, who have been emasculated and have had so many of their own people slaughtered, but also naturally this is debilitating Russia for the sake of a dream of an empire, and that isn't going particularly well either. So I don't think there are any winners. Obviously, Trump wants to be the winner. Ukraine wants to continue to exist. Russia wants its empire. Those three things can't coexist in the same space-time continuum.
President Zelensky's visit will be closely watched for signs of how this minerals agreement might reshape not just U.S.-Ukraine relations, but potentially the trajectory of the ongoing conflict. And we're following a developing story out of Japan tonight, where the northeastern city of Funatu is battling devastating wildfires. It's a heartbreaking scene, and unfortunately, we're now reporting one person has died, dozens of buildings are damaged, and firefighters are working around the clock to get these flames under control. Now, these fires, they started Wednesday, but they've just been spreading rapidly across this coastal city. Officials said helicopters have been deployed from local fire departments, police, and even the self-defense forces, all trying to get a handle on this from the air. And we're talking about roughly 1,200 hectares burned. That's a massive area, and the damage is extensive so far. They're estimating over 80 buildings have been hit, but sadly that number could climb. And get this, dry air advisories have been in place for over a week down there. It's just fueled these flames, and right now over 800 people are in evacuation centers. And for those of you who remember, Funatu was one of the hardest hit areas during the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Meanwhile, Cyclone Garan slammed into the French overseas territory of La Réunion with top wind speeds of 155 kilometers per hour today, blowing away roofs and cutting power and access to drinking water for many residents. Now, the island's prefect, Patrice Latron, said there were no reports so far of any deaths. The cyclone made landfall in the north of the Indian Ocean island, which lies off Madagascar. It exited the southwest of the island several hours later, according to Meteo France weather agency. The prefecture said 180,000 households, about 42% of the electricity utilities customers, had lost power, and nearly 10% had no access to drinking water. The prefecture said the worst of the storm had passed, and a storm alert had been downgraded from the highest level, purple, to red. And this meant rescue workers could now leave their shelters and start to assess damage and help those affected. A mandatory order for residents to stay indoors remained in place, and authorities expected rough weather conditions until at least the end of the day. Top winds had dropped to 130 kilometers per hour, Meteo France said, but higher gusts were possible on the southwest of the island, with heavy rains now seen as a bigger risk. In nearby Mauritius, authorities reopened the airport after a threat from the storm eased. 2 Russian divers have tragically lost their lives in a Philippine scuba incident. Russian divers aged 18 to 57 and their dive master were exploring near Batangas on Luzon last Thursday when a strong current pulled them apart. While 3 divers managed to surface and return to their boat safely, rescuers later recovered the bodies of 2 men. The first victim was pronounced dead upon arrival at a local hospital. The second, found between 4 and 5:30 p.m., was retrieved after being caught in the jaws of a shark, his arm missing. And it's still unclear whether the shark attack caused his death or if he was already deceased. Notably, shark attacks in these waters are exceedingly rare, with no incidents recorded in the past year. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. U.S. President Donald Trump says his proposed 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian goods will take effect on March 4th. At the same time, he will slap an extra 10% duty on Chinese imports because deadly drugs are still pouring into the U.S. from those countries. Now, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that the fresh tariffs on Chinese imports will be on top of the 10% that he levied on February 4th over the fentanyl opioid crisis. The end result, a cumulative 20% tariff on Chinese imports. 20% tariff on Chinese imports. Vamasai Likeness for more.
Things are about to get more expensive for U.S. consumers. Trump's tariffs are going to raise the cost of goods coming from Canada, Mexico, and China. And Americans will feel the pinch at the cash register. A lot of fresh fruit and vegetables are brought in from Mexico, especially during the winter months. Chinese goods dominate the shelves of retailers. And Canada supplies raw materials, things like lumber, oil, car parts, and other items. All of that means higher prices and a boost in the inflation rate. Trump justifies the import surcharges, saying the three countries are responsible for the drug crisis in the U.S. He had given Canada and Mexico a one-month reprieve from the tariffs, but he says he doesn't believe a lot of progress has been made to stem the flow of illegal narcotics.
I don't see it at all, no, not on drugs. The drugs come in through Mexico. They come, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them come from China.
China's embassy has not commented on the latest tariffs. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dismisses Trump's claims that a lot of fentanyl comes from America's northern neighbor.
For months now, I've been emphasizing that less than 1% of the fentanyl that arrives in the United States comes from Canada. But we know that even that 1% or less than 1% should be reduced, which is why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our border capacities with Black Hawk helicopters, with drones, with 10,000 people patrolling our borders and keeping Canadians and Americans safe.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says she hopes to reach a deal with the U.S. She says top Mexican officials are in Washington for talks with the U.S. government.
The goal is to protect the trade treaty between Mexico, the U.S. and Canada, and within this frame see what actions to take to strengthen the three economies. So, Mexican ministers in Washington, D.C. have studied the issues thoroughly, and there have been previous discussions. So I hope we can reach an agreement, and on March 4th we can announce another thing.
Canadians in particular are not impressed with the impending trade war. Many are boycotting American products. Others have cancelled planned U.S. vacations. And for his part, Trudeau says Canada's not about to roll over and take Trump's economic bullying.
If on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
Trump's next target will be the European Union. He says the relationship between the United States and the EU hasn't been good.
And we do have problems with the EU because they've tariffed us. They do it in the form of a VAT tax, which is about 20%, and many other taxes. They sue our companies. They sued Apple, got 16 or 17 billion dollars, which was, I think, totally a ridiculous decision. And they're suing Google for a lot of money. They're suing a lot of other companies, and we don't like the way they're treating our people now. We don't like the way they're treating our companies.
Trump downplays the potential inflationary impact of tariffs for Americans. He argues that his first-term tariffs on China raised hundreds of billions of dollars without negatively affecting the U.S. economy. Rebecca Christie is an analyst with the economic think tank, the Brussels-based Bruegel Institute. She says She's not surprised by Trump's tariff talk.
Trump's whole political brand is to create a sense of victimhood, to create a sense that the most powerful people in the most powerful country in the world are somehow the people who are truly being harmed here.
She adds it's difficult to say what the American president will do, as he's reversed himself many times. Christie describes him as a disruptive force.
Trump is creating uncertainty, he's creating chaos, he likes to make headlines, and he likes to convince his base that he is defending the U.S. from some sort of oppressor, defending U.S. companies, U.S. workers, U.S. rich people. Someone out there is oppressing, again, the world's biggest economy, the world's richest economy, some of the richest people in the world. We should expect him to keep saying these things. We should look for what he actually does, what his actions are, and not just react to every single thing that he says is going to happen.
So once again, the world waits to see what Trump's final decision on tariffs will be, and whether delegations from Canada and Mexico, currently in Washington, can change his mind. The chaos continues. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
In Washington, the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, claims it has saved an eye-popping $65 billion in federal funds. But new data tells a very different story. And so far, DOGE has only canceled federal contracts and lease agreements worth $144 million. Could it be that the rest of those savings are nothing more than inflated figures? DOGE officials say they plan to provide real-time data, yet data lags mean key details remain missing. Without a clear breakdown of where these savings are coming from, critics are asking, are these numbers genuine or just a bold sales pitch? And can anyone verify that $65 billion is truly on the books? Launched on January 2025 under President Trump to streamline government operations and trim waste, DOGE was led by none other than his close aide Elon Musk.
I actually just call myself a humble tech support here because this is actually, as crazy as it sounds, that is almost a literal description of the work that the DOGE team is doing. The overall goal here with the DOGE team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country $2 trillion deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt, now exceeds the Defense Department's spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack, and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I like to stack them up, you know. But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done.
Yet, despite these bold claims, DOGE's latest report only confirms the cancellation of 2,299 federal contracts across 47 departments, nearly double last week's count. But still, lists lease cancellations at just $144 million. Previous errors have only added fuel to the fire. A reported $8 billion in savings on one contract was later corrected to $8 million, and supposed cuts of nearly $900 million from the Department of Education's budget are now under intense scrutiny, with independent reviews suggesting that nearly $400 million may have been wasted. As experts from both sides weigh in, many are questioning whether DOGE's numbers are more smoke than substance.
Also, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect. But when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sharply criticized Thailand for sending at least 40 detained Uyghurs back to China, saying the move puts them at serious risk of torture and persecution.
The UN Human Rights Office called Thailand's return of at least 40 Uyghurs to China a clear violation of international human rights laws on Thursday.
It's now important for the Chinese authorities to disclose their whereabouts.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemned the move and called on Thai authorities to, quote, fully verify continuously that Chinese authorities protect Uyghurs' human rights. The Uyghurs held in Thailand were part of a group of 300 who fled China and were arrested in 2014. Some were sent back to China and others to Turkey, with the rest kept in Thai custody. Rights groups accuse Beijing of widespread abuses of Uyghurs, a mainly Muslim ethnic minority numbering about 10 million in the western region of Xinjiang. Beijing denies any abuses. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Zhen said the detainees were repatriated in line with the laws of both countries. Thailand's defense minister said China had given its assurances that the group would be looked after and that they were sent back in accordance with international standards.
The images have already spread worldwide. If we go back on our promise to our neighboring country, it would be wrong, not just towards them, but the whole world would see it. Therefore, I am confident that China will take good care of this group of people.
Now more details have emerged in the case of actor Gene Hackman's mysterious death. The 95-year-old icon was found on his kitchen floor by sheriff's deputies executing a search warrant at his Santa Fe home, while his 64-year-old wife, pianist Betsy Arakawa, and the couple's dog were discovered in a bathroom amid scattered prescription pills. Here's more.
Yeah, I was thinking...
More details have emerged regarding the death of actor Gene Hackman, who was found dead of unknown causes alongside his wife and their dog at the couple's home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. After entering with a search warrant, sheriff's deputies found the body of the 95-year-old actor on the kitchen floor. His wife, 64-year-old pianist Betsy Arakawa, and the dog were found in the bathroom with scattered pills from an open prescription bottle on the bathroom counter. Authorities said on Thursday that both Hackman and Arakawa appeared to have suddenly fallen to the floor, and neither showed signs of blunt force trauma. A sheriff's department statement said foul play was not suspected, but authorities said the deaths were, quote, suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation. According to the warrant application, a maintenance worker first discovered the bodies. A 911 call released Thursday by Santa Fe County revealed that the worker could not access the home, but that he could see a woman on the floor through the window.
Santa Fe 911, what is your emergency?
Hello, my name is... I'm the caretaker for Santa Fe Summit. I'm here about past 10,000 ways. I think we just found one deceased person inside a house. What's the address here? There's no address. There's no address. I'm going to wait for you at the gate. I'm going to wait for you to please send somebody really quick.
The home's front door was ajar, although there were no signs of forced entry. There were also no obvious signs of a gas or carbon monoxide leak, but those possibilities were still under investigation on Thursday, while detectives were awaiting autopsy reports and toxicology test results. Hackman appeared in more than 80 films, including his Oscar-winning turn in The French Connection, as well as on television and the stage during a lengthy career that began in the early 1960s.
Now, despite AI's major boost in all platforms, not all users of the technology in Canada are convinced of its accuracy and reliability. In Toronto, NET25 correspondent Chantel Santos has this report.
AI, or artificial intelligence, is clearly becoming the norm in day-to-day life. And recent poll reports the majority of Canadians are skeptical, and that increase in AI use makes information sources less credible. The same sentiment is mirrored in Canadians' confidence in how AI positively contributes to the economy across all provinces. According to the same report by CanTrust Index, there are generational differences. Millennials and Gen Z Canadians have a higher level of trust in AI's reliability. Older Canadians polled said that they do trust in online news, but that they do not find AI language models credible. Overall, across all generations polled, they reported having more faith and trust in traditional news sources like newspapers, TV, and radio broadcasts. Experts say that only time can tell if trust in AI will improve. People these days are skeptical and spend more time fact-checking the information they see online, as AI does not understand complicated nuances and ideas the way humans could. Chantal Santos, Toronto, Ontario, for NET25 World News.
In Tokyo, researchers have unveiled a gentle giant that might revolutionize elderly care. Meet IREC, a human-sized robot designed to change diapers and prevent bed sores in a country facing a critical shortage of caregivers. Take a look.
As an aging population in Japan causes a severe shortage of care workers, researchers hope IREC can ease the problem. It is an AI-driven humanoid robot designed to carry out tasks for elderly people who need critical care, such as changing diapers or preventing bed sores. IREC is being developed by researchers at Japan's Waseda University. The project is funded by a government program designed to foster disruptive innovation to resolve difficult societal issues. Professor Shigeki Sugano leads the research.
As we are entering a super-aging society and the birth rate is declining, we will need robots' support in providing medical and elderly care and in our daily lives. Unfortunately, the current robot technologies are still in a premature stage when it comes to interacting with people and supporting them. The ultimate goal of our project is to somehow achieve that.
Sugano says IREC can make physical contact with people safely and adjust its actions in response to spontaneous human moves. A dwindling working age in Japan has prompted the country to turn its eyes to robots for a solution. Over the next decade, the number of people in the 15 to 64 age bracket is projected to fall almost 10%, according to the National Institute of Population and Social Security Research. This care facility in Tokyo is already experimenting with various smart devices to help reduce caregivers' burden. Its COO, Takashi Miyamoto, says a chronic labor shortage in the elderly care sector will likely only get worse. He believes the days when robots will work alongside human caregivers are, quote, certain to come. Resident Yukiko Namekata was asked about her view on the possibility of having a robot care worker. She said, "Isn't it a little too early for that?" Care worker Takagi is cautiously optimistic about the use of robots.
If such a robot were really created, I think it would be very helpful to us in the field. However, I'm a little bit worried that the warmth generated from human interaction between residents and caregivers and the subtle communication, such as reading the room and understanding the situation, might be difficult to replicate.
Sugano hopes IREC can start to be put into actual use in various occasions by 2040. And by 2050, he hopes it will be able to work independently at a nursing care facility or even conduct medical operations with doctors.
And with that, we have tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.